Hey team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update for the 20th of February 2024, a little bit later than I was hoping. We're all slowly meandering our way towards death. I feel I've accelerated that process this morning, today, last few days. Goodness, rough as a badger's arse. Right. Okay, enough whinging from me. You don't need to hear that. There are people on the front line far worse positions than I am. Right, okay. Personnel loss, well, general staff figures for the Russian losses from the Ukrainian general staff, all the usual caveats apply to this. 1,230 personnel lost. That is an incredibly high number again. 5 tanks, 36 armoured personnel vehicles. That's an incredibly high number. 40 artillery pieces. That's a very high number. 2 multiple launch rocket systems and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. That's useful. 2 aircraft to be added to that we saw yesterday, and 38 vehicles and fuel tanks, 6 pieces of special equipment. This is all very useful for the Ukrainians. Some really high numbers being posted there in a number of these categories. This is unsustainable losses. These are unsustainable losses for the Russians. And yet, right at this moment, it is desperate for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are having a tough time, and that's an understatement in sort of 5 areas of the front line particularly. The Russians are, and there's talk about this in the ISW, a number of analysts are saying that the Russians, as you would expect, it's pretty obvious tactics. The Russians know the Ukrainians are screwed for ammunition. They know that they are having one of their troughs in terms of, the peaks and troughs of assistance from international partners. This is going to be the best time for the Russians to attack, and so they've amassed as many troops as they can in a number of different directions. We'll touch on this a little bit later, and are pushing really hard. The Ukrainians are losing large numbers of people relative to the size of their army and the size of their potential for mobilization. The Russians are losing, I would imagine, quite a lot more, and there's good evidence to support this. But again, as I keep saying, those ratios may be to the advantage of the Ukrainians, but the Ukrainians just have fewer people to be able to lose. The Russians don't particularly seem to care much about the lives of their troops. In fact, they're gathering some of their troops from abroad, from prisons, and so they can happily send them in to take small areas of land for incredibly high cost, something we'll return to again later. Now, these are the losses from Andrew Perpetua. His totting up by looking at the socials. You can see it's about just over a 2-to-1 ratio of Russian losses to Ukrainian losses. Now, that is, unfortunately, although it's still good for the Ukrainians, it's not as good as they would like, and they have had much better ratios than this. Let's see what they have lost in terms of value. And we've got a bit of a mixed bag here. So they've lost a jet ski and a boat. Don't know whether they were full or had people on board and whatnot. Quite often they get hit at the side of the river, not necessarily in crossing. So if you just lose a boat, that's obviously not as bad as losing a boat full of people. Both do happen. Then we have some tanks, 3 T-64 BVs, a couple of other tanks, and a Leopard 2A4 there. That was taken out by shelling. That is going to be a sore loss. That has been destroyed. It's a fairly high value tank. In the infantry fighting vehicle segment, we have a couple of BMP-1s. Okay, then we have a Marder taken out by Lancet. That's a fairly high value piece of kit. In the APCs, a couple of Humvees. They do have a number of these. I saw a whole bunch of Humvees while I was out there, and equivalents, looked like Ukrainian equivalents of Humvees, and M113, and then pickup trucks and whatnot. So yeah, a little bit this, a little bit that. Then we look at the Russian losses, and included in there is a Su-35S. So straight away, it's a massive value to add to this list, and that's going to be hard for the Ukrainians to overcome. So that one piece of kit is kind of worth much more than the entire Ukrainian losses, but we'll obviously need to go and see if the rest of the list is valuable. Recovery vehicle there, excavator, that Zala launcher, it says drone there, but actually that was a vehicle with 2, at least the footage, it shows a vehicle picking up 2 Zala drones, get them in the back, and then goes back to where it parks up and then gets hit by a HIMARS, which is interesting. It says PGM here. Video I said suggested it was HIMARS that took it out, if it's the same one. So that was a vehicle and two drones and possibly the crew as well, don't know. But that's quite a high value loss if it is, because it's expertise with that whole setup. A couple of Urals with S60s on for artillery, some older howitzers there, and some other bits of kit. Then tanks, bit of a range, nothing too valuable. I mean, they're all fairly valuable, right? T-72, T-64BV. Infantry fighting vehicles are numbered there from BMP 1s and 2s up to BTRs and BMDs. And then some armoured personnel carriers as well, and your normal sort of military trucks and civilian vehicles. So quite a range of things lost there. Very high value, given that there's a jet fighter thrown in there as well. Speaking of jets being taken down, evidence that one certainly was is near Mariupol. A resident covertly filmed the occupiers' attempts to rescue the occupiers' attempted rescue efforts after yet another of Russia's jets went for an unscheduled dip in the Azov Sea. 6 planes being shot down by Ukraine in 3 days. So the helicopter was out. I believe the pilot was found floating face down. Yeah, it certainly happened. It appears. Right. Just going to go to this comment, and this comment regards someone from my threads. This comment regards Avdiivka and the losses incurred there. This is Kevin Forst. Says, I want to make a point about Avdiivka. The Red Army lost 81,000 men taking Berlin in 1945, a city with a pre-war population of 4.5 million and 2.8 million at that time. It took around 2 months. They've just lost at least 50,000 men, this is the Russians, taking a city with a pre-war population of 32,000. They've been at this for 2 years and hard at it for 6 months. Actually, they've been at it since 2014. This is a 10-year project. The Russian trolls are crowing that this is some kind of victory. War is algebra and they can't even add and subtract. That is why they lost the Cold War. Oh, and the city is still not taken yet. So it's worth getting some perspective here that Avdiivka was bad. It was bad for the Ukrainians to lose that. There was some strategic value to Avdiivka. They've lost a lot of equipment within there, I would have thought, things like ammunition and storage, caches of stuff. They've lost troops, people that surrounded. It was not good. Avdiivka was not good for the Ukrainians in the last week or so. Other than that, it's been very good for the Ukrainians in terms of what it's been able to achieve in terms of fixing Russian forces, attriting them, and the sheer volume of mechanized equipment the Russians have lost since October trying to take the place. It is phenomenal. I'm going to do an analysis of losses that Dell has sent me later today as my extra. But it has been incredibly painful for the Russians. Now, here the comparison is Berlin to Avdiivka. Avdiivka's taken far longer to take and has incurred far more, well, relatively speaking, far more casualties. But it was someone else yesterday. There was this thing going a little bit viral talking about that it took, what was it? In the Second World War, Allies lost the same amount of troops. It was talking about like 16,000 troops over the last however many days that the Russians have lost. And they've taken Avdiivka, and the Allies did that in World War II, and they liberated, with the same losses, they liberated the island of Sicily and was it Tunisia? Like, the losses the Russians have incurred at Avdiivka are phenomenal, and we shouldn't forget that. We should understand that this has been a very difficult couple of days for Ukraine. Of course it has, but my goodness, it's come at a massive cost to the Russians. That's a real worry for those Russians. Now, news that was going around a lot last night was this Russian pilot Maxim Kuzminov, who flew that Mi-8 helicopter into Ukrainian territories in a pre-arranged kind of handing over the helicopter. His co-pilots didn't know what was going on. They were shot, I think, by special forces. And then he was, he wasn't up for what was going on in the war and basically surrendered the helicopter. And that was all quite a coup for the Ukrainians. Well, anyway, apparently he has died in exile, I believe, in Spain, where I presume he was being secretly looked after there in Spain. Russian Maxim Kuzminov, who hijacked the Mi-8 helicopter for the Ukrainian armed forces in August 2023, has been found dead. In Russia, a criminal case was opened against the young man under the article of state treason. 2 young men who were with him in the helicopter were shot after landing in Ukraine. Already in October 2023, propagandists of Russia 1, citing anonymous intelligence officers, stated that Kuzminov will not live to see the trial because the intelligence service, quote, has already received the order. Well, it looks like that has happened. That's now been confirmed. I know there's an update there, but it has, I think, been pretty much confirmed that he has been assassinated in Spain. Be interesting to see how Spain reacts to that. As an important European ally. Right, moving on. We have, this is some superb footage here. So this is concerning a number of warehouses that FPV drones just quietly fly into and blow up Russian equipment. This is a great bit of footage. And, there's quite a number of bits of kit that they target, coming in here. This is a Terminator, I think, which is a really high value target, surrounded by trucks and other things. But that is it there, a Terminator, which is an infantry fighting vehicle that's been set up with different modules on top. That's very recent. They've only got a few of them. Anyway, that's taken out. There we have in another warehouse behind, T-72, another one here with a BMP-3, and then another one here with, I don't know, something else, a T-72, so on and so forth. Just lots of these repeated, and in the end, you've got a big sort of burning set of warehouses that is a really good haul of equipment loss. And when you see stuff like that, and you go back to these losses, that's just one place that has been attacked by a number of drones and has lost, I don't know, a fair number of bits of kit that feed into those stats. The other bit of footage I think is worth showing here is this that was doing the rounds last night. This is apparently a Magyar video. Now, this is the only place I've seen this claim of this video, which shows an Ukrainian FPV drone strike a Russian fixed-wing drone. A fixed-wing FPV drone. They were able to watch the video feed and send up FPVs to take it down. So how I understand that is that the Ukrainians had hijacked the feed of the Russian FPV drone, I guess to know where it was, to then send up drones to take it down. Interesting if that is indeed the case. Right, let's just have a quick look and see what happened here. We have an FPV drone fight going on. So that looks like the footage from the fixed-wing aircraft right at the beginning there, which is this white one. You have the other drone that kind of goes under it, and that looks like the drone there. So this is a Ukrainian drone, that blue and yellow one, obviously. So it's quite incredible that they have appeared to hacked into this fixed-wing drone feed, and then they take it out of the sky. I think here it comes, and then it kind of disappears. So one assumes they both go down in a blaze of glory. Bosh. It's the end of those drones. Something that I think we've seen an increasing number of pieces of footage concerning, and we are going to see more as drones become even more prevalent in this war and future wars. Ukrainian air defense forces last night shot down in this is the distance munition segment, Striikes and whatnot, 23 of the 23 drones flown into Ukraine. It was a 100% success rate, which is obviously very good. Drones did fall and did cause some damage. Russian drone strike in Poltava Oblast caused a fire in an industrial facility. I'm assuming that is debris coming down from it rather than a direct strike, because the Ukrainians are claiming 23 from 23, but who knows? The attack on the industrial facility has caused a substantial fire that required 85 firefighters to extinguish. So that might have been the target. I don't know. And then there's been... Now, I find this interesting for several reasons. I've been called out. People like Radika Pereira said, oh, when when there is damage to Ukrainian cities, you talk about falling debris, like I've just mentioned, although I'm not sure about that one, even though the stats would suggest, if it's true, that would be the case. But, I am skeptical. You say it's this, and when there are strikes on places like Belgorod, you talk about it being a falling Russian missile or an air defense missile that goes awry or whatever. And it might look to him like I'm using double standards, but when you look at the evidence, the sheer number of times that we know Russian missiles have gone wrong, and the number of times we know they've gone wrong in their own territory, and the Russians even admitted this, talked about it, that massive one in that village in, I forget where it was, might have been Belgorod or Blast, might have been Voronezh though, or something, I think it could have been Voronezh, that have caused all sorts of trouble. Russian missiles have a tendency to fall out the sky quite a lot more, it seems, than the Ukrainian missiles. So this is a wreckage of a Russian Kh-101 cruise missile that fell in Volgograd region of Russia, approximately 425 kilometers from the front line. This is a long way away. An unknown object fell into a field in the Yelansky district of Volgograd region. There is no destruction on the ground, says Russian media. But there is indeed a Russian cruise missile. Now, okay, hitting civilian infrastructure is going to be less probable than landing in a field due to the size of Russia and the amount of fields there are. But we have seen Russian missiles land in villages and cause problems. We've seen Russian planes crash into cities. Earlier on in the war, twice I think that happened. Just it's about form, and it's about probability, and you need to look at what's happened before to get a good sense of what might be happening at any given time, prediction and whatnot based on previous form. Right, some damage in Dnipropetrovsk from falling drones. 3 dachas and 2 cars were caught by falling debris in Dnipropetrovsk area. And then in Novoslobidska, a community in Sumy Oblast, 2 civilians have been killed. Attack caused a fire in a residential building. Search and rescue operations are underway. I mean, this is pretty typical. It's a border area and it gets shelled quite a lot, and shells can hit residential buildings. Of course, this is what the Ukrainians are saying. Could they be covering up the fact that that was a military installation or a house with military men in? I don't know. But there has been shelling in Sumy. And then this wasn't last night. That's actually the night before, but I just missed this coming out when I did yesterday's news. More explosions in the provinces of Russia. So listen to this, of the Kstovsky district in Nizhny Novgorod. Some reports that Lukoil plant may have been hit, so an oil refinery. Now, I can't speak to what's happened here because there's very little information comes out, but the Ukrainians are very active with their drones, and I think you will see an increase in activity on a consistent basis as Ukraine are given greater capabilities of drones and develop greater capabilities of drones and use them into Russia very, very often. It's just going to happen. And here's a little bit more detail. Locals report an explosion at Nizhny Novgorod, and it happened in the area of the Lukoil oil refinery, one of Russia's largest. It will be hit. This is roughly, if it hasn't already, this is roughly 860 kilometers from Ukraine, more or less the maximum range of known Ukrainian drones. Having said that, we have seen strikes that have been 1,200 kilometers. So, it's difficult to know what they can and can't do. There's a degree of secrecy from both sides, actually. The Russians don't want to let things out that they are vulnerable, that they've been struck at key installations very far back from the front line. So it's going to be difficult to find out the true extent of the Ukrainian success in this manner. Right. Moving on, an explosion occurred at a metallurgical plant in Balakovo, Russia, injuring 3 people, according to Russian media. Now, was this a strike? Don't know. According to preliminary data, the explosion was caused by smoking near explosive cylinders. Almost certainly not the case. Almost certainly being hit by something. This was, again, I think, not last night, but the night before, but it came out a little bit later. So, still, these places getting hit, and the Russians coming up with I'd say, ever more creative explanations. This is the same explanation, and we didn't believe it then. So the chance of us believing it now is slim to none. Right, on to other bits and pieces now. We're going to return to Alexei Navalny. And I just have to say, goodness me, right, I get tired of Russian trolls. Of course we all do. Especially when it's so bloody obvious, like, who are the bad guys in this? I mean, it really, really is. We have a situation whereby Putin has assassinated, on the third attempt, I think it is, his political opposition. He's already killed Boris Nemtsov. He's killed or imprisoned other people as well. Here is an example of Putin clearly doing this because he's not releasing the body to the family. No one knows the whereabouts of the body because it's going to be riddled with poison or beaten up or something. They took down the cameras and listening devices just before he died, so on and so forth. It's dodgy as all hell. So next, the reports the Kremlin will not give away Navalny's body to his family until after the presidential election, or never at all. The Kremlin is now trying to silence the mourning for Navalny because he could spoil Putin's re-election in March. Because of this, the authorities fear a public funeral for the opposition figure. The Kremlin are even considering the unprecedented option of never releasing Navalny's body at all as a justification for hiding the corpse. The Kremlin may refer to the fact that the state has the right to dispose of a body of a person convicted of terrorism at its discretion. Similarly, the authorities can do the same with the body of its if its burial threatens the spread of dangerous diseases. The IC has so far launched an investigation into Navalny's death, which allows 30 days, just until the end of the election, for the body not to be given away. In the next 2 weeks, the politician's body will be under some kind of chemical examination. It's all so convenient, and it just points to the conclusion that this was the doing of the Kremlin. There are some people that, you know, David Sachs and other kind of pro-Kremlin American and Western mouthpieces that seem to do so much work for the Kremlin. People like Elon Musk, David Sachs, so on and so forth. They spout this kind of stuff that, why would this be in the interests of the Kremlin? And then a couple of days later, the Kremlin denies the body being released to the public, and we hear about all this other information that clearly points to the conclusion that it's them what did it. Yulia Navalnaya, the wife of Alexei Navalny, said, "We know exactly why Putin killed Alexei 3 days ago. We will share this with you soon." So that is a very interesting hint at what could come. Yulia said that she will continue fighting for Alexei Navalny's cause and urged other Russians to join her. Right, moving on. Preparing for a powerful offensive, Russians have assembled a 50,000 strong army near Zaporizhia region, and the enemy continues to build up his forces. That's the CNN, according to sources in the Ukrainian and Russian military. Now, there are these claims that there are 110,000 Russian forces, you know, in Liman direction and down the east, and you got 50,000 near Zaporizhia. You claim that 40,000 near Mariupol. I think the reality is the Russians are probably going to throw. It's almost like it's the last roll of the dice. I mean, it really does depend how any future mobilizations go, but I would imagine, and do you know what? I would probably do the same if I was. What do I know? But if I was in charge of the Russian army now, I'd be like, this is the time to throw everything at Ukraine. While the Congress dithers, while they are struggling for ammunition, and before they get other nations, like we're hearing about Czechia, we're hearing about Denmark, we're hearing about could possibly be ammunition being sourced from, say, Turkey. Before that gets to the front line, Russia will need to hammer Ukraine in as many places as possible. So I think this is what's going on, and it's completely unsurprising. Indeed, Tatarugami here says twice as many Russian units as Ukrainian forces are in Donetsk. A crucial observation from the OSINT organization Roshan Consulting. This supports Tatarugami's previous analysis, affirming Russia's significant numerical advantage in personnel and vehicles. Well, yeah, this is definitely something we know anyway, but yeah, as Tatarugami says, a few things can be done. Radical increase in the quantity and quality of provided aid. Well, yeah, that's what we've got control over. Increased mobilization efforts, that's what Ukraine has control over. And severe sanctions on Russian oligarchs and Russian companies, and not half measures, that's what we have power over. and it's essentially just more of the same, but just significantly more. Right, now, moving on to what Russians have been evidenced as doing, these incidences are coming out thick and fast. So Russians agreed to evacuate 6 wounded Ukrainian soldiers blocked at the Zenith position in Avdiivka. They then killed them. I kind of made reference to that previously. That's a statement from the 110th Separate Mechanized Brigade. And then another video here, yet another video of sickening war crime. I can't show it to you. As Russia executes 3 more unarmed, surrendered Ukrainian soldiers. This also happened on the front line in the Zaporizhia region. I just, any Russian trolls on my threads, is this what you advocate? Is this whose side you're on? Is this whose side you're on? I can give you countless examples of Russian war crimes, and I can't give you countless examples of Ukrainian war crimes. It's just that simple. Anyone that, in my opinion now, anyone that advocates basically for Russia or not for Ukraine is in my book a moral monster. I can't abide it. I don't want to keep saying, I've been to Ukraine. I've been to Ukraine, and I've spoken to people who have had first-hand experience of war crimes. I've spoken to people who are involved in the war. I've seen the people of Ukraine. I've seen the damage that Russia is doing to civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. Like, it is to me as clear as it comes. Right, the leader of the indigenous Tatar people of Crimea made an uplifting speech to followers. Mustafa Dzhemilev has, quote, every reason to believe that this will be the last year of occupation. So Crimea will not be under Russian occupation beyond 2024 or so. He told Crimeans to stay away from military facilities and urged Russians to leave while they can. This is, good news that the Crimean Tatars are going to get up in arms and start causing, or continue to cause, the Russians some real issues in Crimea particularly. However, I do worry about the Crimean Tatars, that they are basically advertising that they're going to do things like this, and it's going to be fairly simple for the Russians to kind of round them up, to keep a close eye on them, and this might cause severe repercussions to that community. But, it is something that needs to happen for sure. And now we have Zelensky visiting, a number of places. He visited hospitals, people rehabilitating from war wounds in the Kharkiv region. He visited here. It's a petrol station. Just, can you imagine, says Tim White, Putin visiting a regular shop in the provinces, shaking hands with normal shopgoers, not too far from the front line. So anyway, this is Zelensky, but I just want to note something. It's not surprising, but it does concern me a little bit. Your man Zelensky is going to be in the most stressful position at the moment. Here's a man who was hoping the war would be sewn up by now for Ukraine. Like, he didn't foresee it going on very long. You could say that as naive, but he may have been counting on international aid and support to a greater degree than actually what happened. He's looking very tired, and even in these moments where you've got people, giving him great support in this shop, he must be so stressed and lacking in sleep and so busy and under so much pressure. And I think it shows here. But again, it's unsurprising. You look at that, you've got people really happy to see him, but that is, unfortunately, he's got a bit of a smile, but not the smiles we have seen before. Here's a man that I think he must be struggling. Goodness me, I couldn't begin to do what that man does on a daily basis, and he's the hardest working politician in the world. But I just think he must be under inordinate pressure, not only from like the direct stuff to do with the war. Again, you look at his face there, but from internal political machinations going on, the criticisms he's receiving, the issue with mobilization. So I think, pictures say 1,000 words, and I think, those pictures do that. Right, again, in another example of Russia being dodgy. Ivan, the son of Igor Sechin, the head of Rosneft, so huge, well, he's a massive Russian oligarch, close to Putin, has died on February the 5th. So either this is some kind of dodgy Russian shenanigans going on behind the closed doors, a case of don't stand too close to windows type thing, or I don't know if this is a family that's close to Putin. Is this Ukraine getting involved in subversive activities in Russia? Who knows? But at the age of 35, this chap has died. This only became public knowledge now when the probate case was published. It was reported that Sechin's son became ill, but the ambulance couldn't find him for hours as it was given an unclear address and there was heavy snow. Rosneft is investigating the case. Russian media report that Sechin forbade FSB and investigative committee to take part in the investigation. So who knows what's going on here? But if the FSB aren't allowed to investigate it, and the oligarch's doing it himself, then this might suggest that this is a Russian thing, rather than anything else taking place. So would be unsurprising, right? Anyway, that's enough from me. Please like, subscribe and share. Really appreciate your support. Take care. And thanks so much to members, by the way. I often forget. Heartfelt thanks to you guys. You keep me going. Take care, y'all, and I'll speak to you soon.